Hi all. So I already went over the books that you have to choose from, or the books that you've been assigned for pre-AP and AP 11 English. I want to go ahead and go over what you're actually going to be doing with the books in this video, so that way you didn't have too much all in one video. So I'm asking you to do a critical journal format. And let me go ahead and pull this up. So essentially you guys have different sheets on the summer assignment. So this is the pre-AP English 10, what that looks like, and then the English 11 looks like this. So you have a different first part, but really the second part, the actual layout of the journal and the things you might write about, are the same. So I did that for kind of ease of grading for me, but also ease of describing things and having you guys do them. And since a lot of you are going to be in 10 pre-AP with me and then 11 AP with me next year, it just made sense to have you do something you're familiar with doing. So we're going to be doing the same assignment in both of those classes, just with different text. So I'm not talking about the text at all today. Of course, you can watch the other videos or look above on your sheets what you need for that. But I'm just going to be going over the format, the purpose of this particular journal, and you know, some of the nitty-gritty bits that you might have questions about. So first off, with the purpose, I'm doing this because I want to see, I'm choosing to do this particular assignment because I want to see what type of a reader you are. And this kind of goes back to what we talked about in our meeting about, you know, plagiarism and copying. I'm honestly not at all interested in what SparkNotes or online blogs or anyone else has to say about these texts. I want to know what you have to say about them. And I want to know what kind of a reader you are, so I can see what you need to work on, what you're doing really well at, where we can go from here. And a lot of you come up with these amazing interpretations of text that I hadn't thought of myself. And so I want to see what you pull from these texts yourself. I'm not interested in what anyone else is doing or your classmates or online. I want to see your thoughts. So please don't copy. It's not worth it. It makes me sad, and then I have to find it and cry over your text. Okay, so first off, I asked you to use a composition book to do this. First off, it's stacked really easily, so if I have a million of these, it's really easy to keep track of. They work really well for our purposes, and I don't care what kind of comp book, so this is kind of the classic one. There are different colors you can buy. I bought this really cute unicorn one last year at Walmart that I'm very happy with. But use any, it's up to you. But I would like it in a composition book. The other thing you'll see as you kind of keep scrolling down and reading about this is that I'm having you guys only write on this side of the page. So if you're facing it, it's the right side of your composition book. And the reason we're doing that is later on, not now, but later on, I'm going to ask you guys to reflect on some of the things you're learning about yourself as a reader. So this is basically your interpretation of the text. That's what I'm having you do this summer. But later during the school year, I'm going to have you look back and notice what kind of a reader you are and what sticks out to you and what interests you when you're reading a text. And that's why we're leaving this side blank for now. One day we will start filling these things out. So I don't have a set number, I think it says up here, of responses that you have to do for each book or chapter or whatever. Last year I did that, and what I found was that a lot of students just tried to get like their 2 responses per chapter or whatever out, and they were never really very meaningful ones because they just were kind of forced and they just felt like they had to find one more tag, you know, one more thing to say about that chapter. So I'm not doing that. You might have multiple in any one chapter. You might have, I don't know, it depends. I'm not going to tell you a certain number. If you're worried at any point that you're not writing enough or that your responses are too shallow, just email me. Notice that the footer of all of your sheets have my email address so you do not forget how to get a hold of me. So please write to me if you're just worried about how many responses you have or what you're producing. I'm happy to look over it at any point in the summer. Do also remember that these are not due the first day of school. These are due in the kind of mid to late July. So I ask that we meet on July 19th. It's a Friday from noon to 3 in D007. I'll be there, and some of our guidance counselors will be there. So that way we can figure out who did the summer work, because remember, you do have to do it to take the course. And that gives me some more time to grade these before the school year starts. Last year I was just swamped in all of these AP. We did dialectical journals that year, and it just got me off to a slow start from the beginning. So this is really helping me, but also then you have a couple weeks to just enjoy your summer and not think about summer work. So you do have to have the journals and the reading done on July 19th. And when you show up that day, you'll be asked to take a short essay test. So essentially I'll give you a prompt on one or both of the books. You'll need to answer it right there in front of me. And then once you turn that in, you're free to go and enjoy your summer. or enjoy it more, because I'm sure you'll enjoy these texts. Okay, so in terms of the content of the journals, I went ahead and did a mock version of this for you, and I focused on To Kill a Mockingbird because I know all of you had to read that freshman year, so I have a few mock entries of what they might look like. But let me just go over the list of things you might choose to include. Again, I'm just interested in seeing what kind of a reader you are. So these are pretty broad and they aren't cut and dry. So it's not like you mentioned something in this category, so now you can't mention something in this one. That's kind of nonsense. You can mix the categories. Don't freak out about that. But this is just going to give you a jumping off point for what to look for when you're looking closely at a text or when you're analyzing it. I just wanted you to have something to work with. So first off, you might notice details that you find significant, explain what seems significant about them. You can talk about how events in the story connect to real life events, so your own life or the news or a movie you watched or another book that you read. I love seeing these connections. They're always really fascinating. So next up is a huge category, and this is kind of like all literary things you might notice. So this is just noticing when you're reading changes and when something comes to your attention. And I give you, again, a list of things. So characterization, or when characters change or develop more, words, themes, symbols that keep getting repeated in the text or that are starting to come up more than once. If the story takes a turn you hadn't expected, you notice a pattern in the text, you realize you've misread a situation. Maybe it would be interesting to read that, read about how you had thought things were going and then how you realized later they weren't what you expected. I always find those fascinating. Our kind of misreadings are really telling of the kind of assumptions we make and the reading that we do. I love those. They're fun to do, so do some. You might also, if you stumble across any words you don't know, then look them up, define them, write them in here. Again, it gives me a sense of what words aren't familiar to you guys and what words we might need to look at throughout the year. I like to make vocab really meaningful and not just random, so it is helpful to see what words you're having trouble with as you read. If you're surprised, tell me why and when it happened. Notice telling or interesting rhetorical or stylistic devices, and I give you a list again, but things like diction or word choice, syntax, so if there's an interesting sentence structure or structure to the text, mention it, tone, figurative language, another list of things, and anything that you think this might suggest or the author's trying to get across by using these different devices. We'll be spending, in 11 AP, we spend a lot of the year looking at how authors convince their audience of something or what kind of moves they make, what the purpose of that was. So this is good practice for that. You might also notice the function of various chapters, paragraphs, or sections of the book to the whole thing. So what does it add? What does this first opening paragraph add to the whole text or to that chapter or whatever? And there's some other little details you can look at here. And then another one I find really fascinating. What are your initial prejudices or biases or assumptions or impressions as you're reading? So if you, and kind of a subnote here, if you feel really strongly about something that you read, then write about that. Tell me, what it was you think really interested you there, or what a character did that bothered you, or whatever. This is, again, really telling about your reading, but also, you as a person and the way you kind of interpret and deal with the world. Okay, so let's look at the example that I set up for you guys. You'll see I did blend a few of these different ones in each of my responses. Something else I did, and this is just good practice for writing generally, is a lot of times I'll use text evidence to kind of back it up. So I'm not saying you have to have a quote in every passage or every little section of your critical journal, but I do think it helps. It's nice to see what part of the text kind of tipped you off or made you feel that way. So, in the first one, you'll notice I got this from the third, I left my book somewhere. Oh, well, the third page of To Kill a Mockingbird. I decided to do, there was one of these about noticing the relationship of a passage or a paragraph to the whole. And I did that with the introduction. I've read To Kill a Mockingbird lots of times at this point, so it's something I'm always looking out for anyway. But in the introduction, in the first couple of paragraphs, we can tell a lot of things about the text and about what's to come. So I wrote, we find out within the first few lines of To Kill a Mockingbird that our narrator is in the future looking back to her childhood. These first two paragraphs serve several purposes. We are given a sense of time that's passed. We understand the slippery nature of a first-person narrator. The narrator tells us that she has, and I have in quotes, discussed the events leading to her brother's accident with him, but both disagree as to their origin, and foreshadowing is used to hook the reader. So you can see this is almost like rambling writing because this isn't final draft stuff. These are just thoughts as you're reading. So it might be a little rambly like mine. So I do have an in-text citation here. I do cite, what text or what page I got that from, that particular quote. I have some quote evidence, and I'm looking at a number of ways that this particular passage contributes. So I'm not trying to be really formulaic. I'm really thinking through what purpose this first paragraph serves, the different purposes it serves. Notice I have in the margin here, I have the page number where I started to respond. So wherever I stopped reading, or wherever you stopped reading to write something, please write the page number there, or the pages if it spans multiple pages, where it comes up, so I can look in my own text to see what it was that got you writing in that particular section. Okay, in the second one, I have a much shorter entry, and this is from pages 3 to 7. You can see we get the sense that history and setting are intertwined in this story, and that both are likely vital to the plot. Scout launches into her family history while simultaneously talking about the history of Maycomb, the, quote, tired old town personification, where she grew up. So here I'm looking really at I haven't said it, but essentially kind of themes I'm noticing, like, the significance of history in this particular text, or history to a place, and the way that setting impacts characters. I haven't really elaborated yet because, remember, I'm supposed to have been on page 3 of my first read-through here. But, that's where I'm going, as I'm noticing this reoccurring pattern. And I also bring up a device. I don't really go into too much about how it affects the reader yet, but I just kind of reference it because I did notice it and wanted to show my teacher it. And then the last one, you can see I try to squeeze it in. Here I'm looking at themes, which is one of the things on your list that you look for. Different themes or symbols that keep reappearing in passage. And so here I'm looking at theme and also kind of genre. So I know, having read this a lot of times, that To Kill a Mockingbird is a Southern Gothic novel. If I were reading this the first time, I might be just kind of, picking up on that. So I'm noticing some Gothic themes. The Radley house is a proper Gothic house. The structure has, quote, darkened to the color of the slate gray yard around it, and shingles are, quote, rain rotted. I got my citation. Even the characters' circumstances are Gothic. Jim imagines Boo chained to the bed, but Atticus assures him that there were other ways of making people into ghosts. Another quote. Suggesting that the phantom Boo has been traumatized. So looking at themes, but also making some assumptions, some guesses about the text. So this, again, is just, an example of how I might approach a journal like this, a critical journal. You can see how I've done a lot of different things in each passage. I'm just looking at my reading and what sticks out to me and what seems important at this point, and I'm explaining it to the person reading this, so my audience. So I'll go ahead and I'll try to link these pages for you guys so that you can, if you lost them, you can access them again, but you should have a print copy. The other thing is, I don't care what order you read the books in, and if you want to read them at the same time, that's fine, but please separate this by book. So let's say that you started with, let's go to my AP class, for example, you started with Educated, you could, start writing here, and don't start writing about Hope in the Unseen until you have finished Educated. If you're doing them at the same time, I would just divide this maybe in half, and then use the first half of the notebook to do one, the second half of the notebook for the other. But in terms of the layout, no set number of entries. If you're worried that you'll have too few or they're too shallow, let me know and I'll look at them. I want you to have the page number to the side, and I just put PG period 3 or page 3, although I did do a proper MLA in text citation when I quoted in the text, which is good practice and good habit to get into. We're doing a lot of that this year. And I'm only writing on, again, the right side if you're facing it of the text. So the left side, when you're facing it, I'm leaving blank so that later I can reflect on the reading moves that I made. So hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions, you can comment below or email me. I'm happy to answer them very quickly. I'm on my email frequently. It's kind of sad. So good luck. Again, let me know if you have any questions. Remember, July 19th, I'm trying to find it so I can remind you. There it is. July 19th from noon to 3 in D007 is when I'll be collecting these. Thanks so much, guys.